So thank you everyone for joining us for tonight's BASE webinar. In a second, I'm going to pass you over to Sarah, who's our presenter for this evening. But just before I do, I'll just shortly introduce myself. So I'm Jo, I'm the founder of BASE. I've got around 15 years of aviation experience, and tonight's topic is something that I actually feel very strongly about. So I'm very pleased to have Sarah with us. Each week we'll be holding weekly webinars, so if you haven't joined us already on the website, you can keep updated with what we're coming next on the aviationbase.com. So we want to make the most of this evening's presentation. So for those that are joining us, there is a chat box on the screen, so please feel free to put in any questions, and we'll get those answered by Sarah over the course of the presentation. So Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So, right. Are you okay to click on the presentation, Jo? Oh, I can do it. There we go. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. So yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the importance of well-being and really building that resilience so that we help us perform better in our everyday lives. So a little bit about me. So I'm a wellbeing consultant and coach, and over the last, time flies actually. Over the last few months though, I've been busy supporting businesses with employee wellbeing and helping them to really build those resilient teams so that people can thrive. And I also provide confidence and mindset coaching. And my background is in HR, worked in HR for over 15 years. And I had a short stint in aviation, so I kind of have a bit of awareness of where you all come from. And I'm really passionate about, as Jo is, about well-being and the importance of looking after ourselves, both at home and at work, so that we can all be our best selves. So bear with me with the technology. Let's hope I don't make any mistakes. So what I'm going to talk to you this evening is about, obviously, well-being, a bit about mental health, and I've got some stats to share with you. And about what causes stress. Stress is part of our daily lives, and just about some of the warning signs to look out for. And a lot about the mind-body connection, which is something that we aren't always aware of in our busy lives. So we're going to touch on that and some techniques to help you with that. And about building those resilient mindsets, having that growth mindset. And about embracing change, particularly as this year we know we've had to deal with a lot of change. And then just touching on the importance of self-care, and really as a reminder for us all. So as Jo said, if you've got any questions, do feel free to ask, and I can take some questions at the end as well. So what is well-being? So well-being is the experience of feeling happy, healthy, and being socially connected. And we all have mental health, and it's about having that good mental health, satisfaction in life, and that sense of meaning and purpose. Sometimes when we're perhaps feeling a bit low or just a bit stuck in life, it's because we don't have necessarily that purpose and direction that we sometimes need. So your mental well-being is about your thoughts, feelings, and how you cope with the ups and downs of everyday life. And we all deal with stress in different ways, but it's important for us to be aware of some of the triggers. So just some stats for you here. So the impact of mental ill health. So according to Mental Health First Aid England, is 1 in 4 people experience mental health issues each year, and 792 million people are affected by mental health worldwide. And at any given time, 1 in 6 working age adults have symptoms associated with mental ill health. Now, over the last few years, you would have seen that, you know, there's more people are talking a bit more openly about mental health now, and that's something that we've certainly been encouraging, and especially in the workplace as well. We don't want people to be afraid to talk about it. So a lot of organisations now have, you know, lots of resources and support there for people, which I'm sure they do in the aviation as well. So what causes stress? So we have external stresses, things that we can't often control. So, you know, work is often a big factor, can be a big cause of stress. Things like the environment, weather, bereavement, traffic jams. It may seem like a small thing, but how many times I know I've been so frustrated before when I've been stuck in traffic, and I can feel that anxiety increasing. Things like lack of job security, particularly this year as well. It's been a tough year for lots of people. Noise, bullying. So all those things that we can't necessarily control in life. And then we've got the internal stressors, so which are things that we can control. So it's our attitudes, thoughts, feelings of anger, fear and worry, and the amount of sleep that we're getting, and the nutrition, about, you know, making sure that we're eating that balanced diet, because if we're not, then that can lead to us impact our health. So just some of the physical symptoms that you might notice, and this isn't, you know, as I said, that, you know, stress happens all the time in our daily lives. So but when you start noticing some ongoing symptoms, it's good to be aware of these and some of the triggers. So perhaps you experiencing headaches, dizziness, or other muscle pains. And sleep problems is quite a common one. You know, you have problems relaxing, especially when we've got lots going on in our lives, and nausea and indigestion. And then we have the emotional effects. So the feelings of constant worry or anxiety, you know, mood changes, mood swings, and the feelings of low self-esteem. So you might think that we're not good enough, we're not intelligent enough for that job promotion, or to be able to deliver a presentation or something. All these feelings that might be going around in our minds. And this really all has an impact on our health. But stress, although it can be challenging for us all, it can also be positive. So it can make us more alert and help us perform better in certain situations. So sometimes we all need maybe a bit of a pressure of a deadline to get things accomplished and taken off our to-do list. But also it can keep us safe. So for example, if you're driving in a car and need to put down that brake really quickly so that you don't hit the car in front of you, you're feeling stress, but it's also keeping you safe at the same time. So stress can be a good thing. You might be, you know, feeling anxious about delivering a presentation or something again, but you get a bit of a buzz about it. So the mind-body connection. So it's important that we understand that what goes on in our mind can really impact our health and our bodies. So the goal of mind-body techniques is to really get the mind and body, it still is. We didn't know what was happening. So there was lots of stress that we were having put on ourselves. But it then makes us more difficult with our immune system to fight off those illnesses. So we want to try and keep ourselves in a healthy state as best we can, and we have got some control over that. So we want to be able to operate from the best place possible. So if we're feeling a little bit low or negative, then we want to try and change that state as quickly as we can. And I always talk about the journey when we go through change. Whatever it may be, you know, we may be traveling along and then we go down the dip. And that's when things get a little bit difficult. And some people continue, get out of the dip pretty quickly and move forward. And others take a bit longer and they stay in that dip. But it's not always, it's not healthy to stay. And then the first one is around journaling. And journaling is a really powerful tool to express our emotions. So if you're really struggling, whether you've always had those times where your head's feeling a bit fuzzy, you're just going from one thing to another, you just can't think straight, then journaling so that you can look to improve on that for next week. And gratitude is a really good tool as well to help focus on the things that you're grateful for, and again focus on the positives. So it could be the little things like that you're grateful for the cup of coffee that you have first thing in the morning, but just to get you focused on those things. So I'd be interested to hear if any of you have actually tried any of these techniques as well. So mindfulness meditation, so this really teaches us to slow down again those racing thoughts and let go of that negativity. Now, there's lots of apps out there. You may have come across Headspace. And even if you go onto YouTube, you can find some guided meditations to help you. But it's really just about having that time to be in the moment and just focused, whether it's 5-10 minutes, because we're so busy every day running from different things, or our mind's busy, even if we're not rushing around at the moment, but our mind's always busy thinking of different things and worrying about things. So it's about just having that time to reflect. Things like yoga as well are good, and doing that breath work. And you can introduce mindfulness just into your everyday routine. So even cleaning your teeth, just actually focused on cleaning your teeth rather than the next call you're going to go on, or worried about work, or whatever it may be, but just focusing on that. Or whether you're in the shower, focus on the water that's coming down, just being in that moment. And again, we always try and multitask so much in today's world, and it's really hard to then make sure you're focused on just one thing, fully focused, and to be able to do it well. So things like you might be sitting down to chill and watch some telly, but we're all lethal with our mobile phones and perhaps scrolling on social media. And it's really trying to limit that and set yourself some boundaries around that, so that you can just relax without looking at what everyone else is doing, and just enjoying the moment that you're in. And getting out in nature, so spending time in green space has been found to reduce stress and anxiety. We all know that we get that boost. I know I do. If I go out for a walk, you just come back, you just feel a bit more, your head's clearer, and you just have a bit more boost of energy about you. And again, it doesn't matter, you can incorporate that. You could just be popping out into your garden, doing some gardening, or just popping out for a 15-minute walk at lunchtime. Just start to try, and especially this year, we've been indoors a lot more, obviously, in lockdowns. I think it's really important to try and make time for you to make sure you do get out in the fresh air. Just want to check I thought I'd skipped one just to make sure. So resilient mindset. So resilience is all about the ability to adapt and bounce back when things don't go as planned. When we're in the fixed mindset, it can be really limiting, because we can be in that negative place. We're not perhaps embracing change. We're stuck. We perhaps won't take feedback on board, and it's not necessarily a healthy place to be in. We want to be in that growth mindset where we're open to change, we're learning from things, we realise that things don't go to plan, and we adapt as we go along. And I've just popped in a quote there about resilience is accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one you had before. And I think that's particularly relevant again for this year. You know, we could have never planned for this. And things like this, you know, can happen. And suddenly we've got to quickly pivot and adapt. Nobody has all the right answers. We're kind of having to learn as we go. But the more that you have that resilient mindset, the more that you're going to be better equipped as you get other problems come your way in the future. So how can you become more resilient? So again, we're all different. Some people are more resilient than others. And you often find people that have been through perhaps, you know, tragic circumstances and trauma have really had to learn resilience and build that resilience to help get them through. But there's some important tools that we can learn in everyday life to help us. So taking ownership for our self-care. Now, I know self-care is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but that's because it is so important. Sometimes we take for granted how important it is to have that, you know, to look after ourselves, to make sure we're having a balanced diet, make sure that we're doing exercise. And when I say exercise, it doesn't mean to say that you've got to go out and run miles and miles each week, or when we could go to the gyms all the time. It could be, you know, a gentle walk. It could be doing some yoga, whatever works for you. The important thing is to just keep your body moving and making sure that we get adequate sleep. And again, that can be really difficult when we've got all sorts of things going on. And it's one thing I struggle with occasionally if I've got things going on in my mind, but that's when things like journaling can really help. And making sure that we've got a strong social network around us. So whether that's work colleagues, family, friends, just knowing that you've got people that you can talk to and share your challenges with, and just feel that you're able to express those emotions, because the chances are, you know, other people will be going through similar. Other people will be frightened and scared, especially this year. And it's important that you feel that you've got those people that you can talk to. And again, you know, if you really are struggling with perhaps your mental health, about looking at where you can get the proper support from that you need. The things I'm telling you today are things that we can all do to help us in everyday life. But if you're feeling that you are struggling a bit more than that, then obviously it is important to get support, whether it's from, you know, counsellors and properly medical trained people in the field of mental health. But also around developing problem solving skills. So not giving up when things get tough, about looking for solutions and adapting and learning from it. It's all a journey, and it's all about personal growth, and it will just help make us all stronger. And when we operate from that growth mindset and we are more resilient, we tend to embrace change. And we all know that dealing with change can be stressful, but we have to learn that it is part of everyday life. There's always challenges that come into our lives. Sometimes they're just a bit bigger than others. But it's looking at the opportunities. And I think what's really important is when we do have all those negative emotions going on inside, we tend to feel like perhaps shutting ourselves away, not talking to other people. But it's really important to use some of the tools that I've talked about today to help you shift that mood and that mindset. And I'm not saying we can't all be positive all the time. That's not possible. But when we are experiencing those negative emotions, it's important to allow them to happen. I think a lot of the time we perhaps try and override them because, again, we're really busy, we're on that hamster wheel, and we just keep going. And that's when it can lead to burnout, sadly, and we've left it too late. Or we might be in a really stressful job and we end up having a heart attack because we haven't either been aware of the signs or just taken that time to really connect with ourselves. So just remember that it's okay to have those emotions, allow them to happen, but then look at them and look at how you can move forward and learn from that. And so about prioritizing self-care, so really about incorporating some really healthy habits into your days. I'm sure you all do anyway, but things like having morning and evening routines can really make a difference, and start incorporating some of the tools that I've talked about today. So some people like to journal in the mornings and meditate. You find the thing that works best for you, but getting up, if we don't get enough sleep and then we're waking up with the alarm and then we're snoozing it or we're oversleeping, it just sets us up for a really bad day. We're already feeling stressed and anxious. So if we can have a morning routine to help us really set us up for the day, then that can be really beneficial. Again, we talked about eating a balanced diet, and I know that you had a great webinar, I think, previously about nutrition. So you've got lots of great, interesting facts there to help you, and about staying hydrated as well. I know when I haven't drunk enough water, I just can't concentrate as much. So that's been one of my big things to focus on, as well as sleep. And sleep, so ideally having 7 to 8 hours of high quality sleep. And that can be really hard at the moment if we're going to bed late, needing to get up early for all sorts of things. But sleep is so important, because then we will find it easier to get up early and have a great morning routine. We talked about exercise and the importance of that, and just about really just getting your body moving. But more importantly, it's about putting these things in your calendars, the same as you would a meeting at work or some training, diarising it and really committing to doing that for yourself, because you are just as important as attending a meeting. And setting clear boundaries. And this is quite a common one with a lot of people around being a people pleaser, always saying yes to other people. And then we end up not achieving everything on our to-do list because we haven't prioritised. So I'd ask you to really think about the next time you get asked something, does it really align to what you're doing? Does it align to your values and your priorities? And if it doesn't, it's okay to say no, or just think about setting clear timeframes. Don't just agree to being able to do something in a really short time frame if you know that it's going to cause you that stress and anxiety. And being kind to ourselves. So thinking about the language we use. We often give other people advice, we're kind to other people, but thinking about the language we use with ourselves. So I often hear a lot of, I can't do this, I don't have time for this. So the next time you think about saying I can't, perhaps look at I can't yet. And if you don't have time, maybe I'm not prioritizing that yet. So just about reframing the language that you're using. And again, that's really helpful with your thoughts as well. So if you're really struggling with something, just try turning it around, turn it from a negative into a positive to help you focus. Because what we want to do is try and trick our unconscious mind a little bit, because that's where all our feelings or emotions are sitting, all those unpleasant feelings. And we want to try and turn them around into a positive. And limit technology and social media. I know this year, again, because everything's been online, the majority of things, it has been challenging. I know in the summer when I was on back-to-back Zoom calls at certain periods, homeschooling and all sorts, I just got to a point where I thought, I can't do this, it just doesn't work. So it's making sure that you allow time for breaks and set clear boundaries around that. And try and limit your social media before bed as well, because that tends to, keep our mind awake otherwise. And really dedicating, I often say, just 15 minutes a day to do something just for you. So if there's something that, like, I don't know, reading a book chapter, or just having a bit of a laugh, watching something that really makes you smile, forget about everything else, just having that time to connect with yourself and do something that you enjoy. Maybe think about some goals that you could set yourself personally, something that you love to take up, an activity or a hobby. Or I always love learning, so I'm always studying something or another, because that's the thing that I just love it, and it keeps me motivated. It gives me goals to focus on. And I think that's just a great way we shouldn't always just necessarily have work goals, but have personal goals, have social goals, whatever it is. Start spending some time to map that out and make sure that it's balanced, because then when you start setting those goals, we often find that the work goals are taking over everything else in our life, and we want to get more balance around that. So, and a little reminder there I'd put about, putting on your own oxygen mask before helping others, because we're not going to be in a good place to help others if we haven't looked after ourselves. And the more we look after ourselves, we feel better about ourselves. And we tend to open ourselves up to more opportunities, because automatically things just feel a lot better. You feel happier in yourself. You can perform better. So it is really important to just try and make time for yourselves and commit. Start with some small goals. So I'm not saying suddenly every day, if you haven't done journaling before, or meditation, or exercising, you don't need to do these things every day. Just start each week focusing on one or two things that you're going to commit to yourself, and set your intentions and hold yourself accountable. And gradually, over time, they will start just becoming automatic parts of your daily routine. And it makes things a lot easier. So I hope you find that helpful. And please do let me know if you've got any questions. I haven't actually looked in the chat, so Jo might be able to help if there are.
There's a few comments here. What I'll do is I'll just maximize us for a second. I'll just stop that slide presentation for a second. There was a few comments in the chat about psychological safety in the workplace, which I thought was very interesting. And you did mention about a lot of employers now are sort of embracing workplace well-being. What advice would you give somebody if they weren't in that situation, where they weren't lucky enough to have an employer that was taking well-being seriously, especially in the current climate?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I spoke about, obviously, a lot of organisations are, particularly this year, have, even if they weren't focused on well-being before, have had to quickly, pivot into suddenly looking at this. But I think if people aren't lucky enough to have that in their workplace, then it's about having those support networks around them, to, family, friends that they can utilise for that support. But also, I think when I look at some of the organisations that I've worked in, giving that feedback to people as well, because quite often, so my background is HR, and well-being often falls under HR. And one of the reasons I've left HR to kind of specialise in well-being is because there wasn't always the resources and budget to drive it in organisations. But there are creative ways that you can do it. So as employees, if you want to get involved in introducing little things into the company, whether it's, it doesn't have to be expensive, but just things to keep people connected, little things that you can do, maybe to keep people connected. So having little social events within the team, doing, I don't know, having a little cocktail hour, or you might just have a cup of coffee together, you know, just little things to encourage those types of behaviours. If people need obviously more support in terms of, you know, they are feeling down, and there's lots of free support networks. I could probably share them actually with you, Jo, afterwards, if that's helpful, for people to go to. But I think a lot of it tends to fall with HR. So perhaps if you are in an organisation that doesn't have that, maybe try and speak to the HR professional and see if there's anything to do. We often think that it has to be really expensive. I've worked in companies where they have all these, you know, spend lots of money on well-being, but it doesn't actually have to be that way. You can do little things around introducing mindfulness classes, yoga, just lots of things that you can offer weekly for people. And again, just to help give them that switch off from work.
Yeah, good advice. We've got a question here about what would be the best method for limiting social media use?
Good question. And it's something I think we probably all have to work on. I'm not perfect, especially with work at the moment. I think you have to be, what I tend to try and do now, my advice is I would definitely limit it in the evening. So if you think before bed, they often say, I think you should cut off social media maybe 2-3 hours even before sleep. But the reality is that we aren't able to do that. But I definitely recommend an hour before bed if possible. But it's so easy, I know, with the mobiles that we're, you know, having that scroll. But I think setting clear boundaries, doing that, even if you are starting to journal, write it down. Say, this week I'm committing to setting these boundaries around social media. So I'm only going to look at it for an hour in the morning and X amount of time in the evening or throughout the day. Maybe restrict yourself yet. So first thing in the morning, I don't recommend it as soon as you get up, but to have snippets throughout the day, perhaps at lunchtime. But often I find actually if you write it down, you will commit to it better because you can see it, and put sticky notes, you know, maybe by your desk or wherever you are as a reminder. You can have affirmations around, because we want to get it into our minds, and when we see it written down, it helps us more.
Yeah, one thing that I've started doing recently myself is a lot of the applications, I've turned off the notifications on there so that my phone doesn't light up and I'm not then drawn to it, and I found that sometimes helps quite a lot.
Definitely. It's so noisy at the moment, especially this year with everyone being online. But I think just, having those clear boundaries and getting it written down and committing to it.
So if anybody who's listening is really struggling at the moment with well-being and isn't sure whether actually they need to go and get that professional help, or whether it's something that they can deal with, you know, thanks to a lot of the tips that you've put in this presentation, what would you say is some sort of clear markers to say, actually, no, that it might not be enough for me to just try and help myself with support of others? I do actually need to go and seek some sort of professional input.
I think if you're having, so a lot of the symptoms that I covered earlier, if they're happening for prolonged periods of time, because we all have days where we've, you know, got a splitting headache and we've had a long day, or your head's just feeling a bit fuzzy, but if it's happening on an ongoing basis and you're just really starting to find everything, you know, hard to focus on everything, whether that's work or in your personal life, you're just always feeling distracted, I think that's really a trigger point for you to think, you know, okay, now you can try some of these techniques, obviously, and they will help to improve. But I think if you're still struggling after that, you might then need to think, I need some expertise, I need some special help. And talking to a lot of, obviously, organisations have like employee assistance programs. I appreciate not everybody has them, but then there are free support groups that that again I can share with you, that people can contact on a free phone basis if they need that support, just to see. But I think just, yeah, if you have it, and that's why I always find it really helpful to, because we are so busy in our little world, sometimes we don't always notice, we think it's the norm.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That's been so interesting. I've definitely taken a few tips away, and I've got to work on my social media use a little bit more. Yeah, thank you very much. And so to everyone that's joined, if you'd like to recap over any of the material,